I think if there's one very important punchline that I would like our audience to take away is that, because Vela Bay was sold at 3,000 to 3,002, and you're telling me that OMG is transacting at 2.7. So this tells me that we can safely tell our Vela Bay neighbors that my exit price will be your entry price. And at the same time, I get to enjoy a 4% rental yield. So this is what I call margin of safety. This is what I call value investing, Warren Buffett style in property context. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I've got my client Joy from Propnex. She's a very experienced realtor with 17 years experience under her belt and has been a consistent top producer with Propnex. So welcome to another episode of Millionaire Realtors Insights. Today, Joy, I'm very interested in one particular project, One Marina Garden. And at the same time, as a property investor, I've always been very curious about this particular area because there's been so much controversies about the Marina Bay area, especially for the new launches. Some of these property influencers, have been saying that, oh, this is the ghost town, nobody will stay there, you should never buy there. Yet there's also another group of like property club, so-and-so friends has been telling people that they should get into the Marina Bay project because of the rental yield. So, Joy, I would like to understand from the historical point of view, because being a realtor with 17 years, you have definitely seen the ups and downs of the Marina Bay area in terms of the condominium prices. Just want to understand, from the history perspective, how has the investor been faring over the past 15 to 20 years in the Marina Bay area? And I think most important thing is timing important in this particular property selection journey.
Sure, Master David. First of all, right, thank you for having me today. Okay, so Marina, in the past, right, when people buy into Marina, what they buy? They probably buy like the sale, Marina One residences, or even Marina Bay residences. But that's like part of the CBD. Today, the different point that we have is, do you know URA actually introduced this 10 minutes township in Marina, which means, right, the people who moved into this area, they are able to access the amenities within 10 minutes just by foot, where the people who stays there, they can have access to the amenities such as supermarket, childcare, and of course the clinics, all 10 minutes by foot. And of course, there are two particular MRT at the opposite end of each other. So this is not like, back in 20 years ago when you tell your friends, hey, why not we take a look at this marina projects? And they always say, yeah, this one cannot stay because it's going to be like a ghost town at night. Nothing's going on. So today is different. So the other thing you want to take note is when you talk about Marina 10 minutes township, right? This is essentially beside the CBD. So in terms of the government, do you think that they would even let this 10 minutes township fail? Like when so many people is looking at this area with the wellness attraction coming up, you're right beside the barrage, and then of course with Gardens by the Bay, so everybody is looking at this plot of land. So it's not like you buy here, right, means 死定了, right?
And I think also, Joy, I think if I could recall correctly, I think now that I think we are on this conversation on the 10 minutes township, I could also recall that I think back in 15 or even 17 years ago, there was always been this talk about the comparison between the sale and the Jurong area, because back then the sale was trading at 1,000 PSF, between 900 to 1,000 PSF, and the Jurong was also trading. The condominium in Jurong back in 15, 17 years ago was also trading at very similar price point. And then if I could recall correctly, history also shows that a few years after, in 2012, 2013, the prices at the sale has jumped by 60%.
Sure.
And the condo in Jurong only jumped by 20%.
Yep.
So could you explain, what is causing this phenomenon 15, 17 years ago?
Okay, so I would say, right, we have to pull out some statistics first. First and foremost, we look at one of the condos here in Lakeshore. It was trading at about $1,000 per square foot. And then later on, 5 years later, it increased by about 1,002. So the overall percentage gain, it's what you said, it's about 20%. Okay, and then for the next one, if we look at the sale, which was going around 1,200, and then 5 years later, it was trading at 1,009.
Wow.
So which means to say, right, there is a 60% appreciation. So today, right, if you compare OMG, One Marina Gardens, Do you know that projects like Pinery, it's also trading at about the same level as OMG? It's about 2005 to 2000 per square foot for Pinery, which was launched earlier this year. And then for OMG, it's trading about 27, some of the units 3000, it depends on the facing. So all in all, right, we have a repeat of the past. However, with that said, right, it doesn't mean that, like back then, the sale and Lakeshore, the sale perform much better today. If you buy OMG, you are sure to be a Huat Kueh, right? But what I will highlight is probably you buy OMG today versus the OCR project. The OCR's PSF might decelerate in terms of its PSF growth, whereas the Central project, the PSF might accelerate at a faster pace or both combined. So it's really... So for the audience out there, right, it's really like you need to weigh. If today you're buying an OCR project at the same price as an OMG, then you have to find out like what's your value proposition, what's your pricing proposition. Is it really like OCR is definitely better that you can clearly sell to the next person freely? Yeah.
I think, Joy, you raised an incredibly good point, because when we start to see, the price gap start to narrow, I think as an investor, I'll be incredibly worried, because when I get into projects like the Pinery, when I get into some of these OCR projects, and I start to see this price gap almost diminish between, the OCR projects like Pinery versus OMG, then this is telling us something that potentially history could repeat itself. And I think this is also why, sometimes I like to use your point of view to dispute some of these claims made by some of these property influencers that we have seen. They have been saying that, you will never ever make money from Marina Bay. I think if history can prove something, history will definitely prove that these people are wrong. Because very clearly, the sale back then not only helped the investors who enter at the right timing to make both capital gains and a phenomenal yield as well. Because imagine, your property price jumped by 60%, that would also means that your yield in terms of the ROI on the property would have also jumped. This is very similar to you buying into a DBS bank shares that pays you a 5% dividend, and then you realize that, wow, the DBS bank shares is appreciated by 100%, 200% over the last 2 decades. And while you are still enjoying a very healthy dividend yield. So a lot of time, I think this is also a very important lesson when you compare, projects like OMG, which is projected to generate a rental yield of 4%. And currently, from the historical point of view, when we are seeing that an OCR project like Pinery and an RCR project like the OMG is having such a minute, minuscule price gap, this is telling us something. And perhaps also from your point of view, because I also read from the developer that is touting this project as a first mover advantage. So Joy, then this brings me to the next point, right?
Sure.
Now that we have evaluated that the timing from the history point of view seems to be optimal to enter the Marina Bay projects itself. So could you also share with me, specifically for the One Marina Garden, this particular project itself, is it a safe buy from the investor perspective?
Sure. Okay, first of all, right, we have to understand that if we buy into OMG today, which is the Central project, how is the prices relative to the OCR projects that we are seeing today or upcoming? So like upcoming, we'll have like Lucerne Grand, which is projected to be around 2.5 to even 2.8 per square foot. And then historically, we have already seen Pinery, which is priced similarly like OMG. Okay, so Master David, so if today, right, let me ask you a few questions. Imagine you're an investor. Okay, you have this project called Pasir Ris 8, and then versus Marina 1 residences, and we backdate ourselves to 2021. So back then, we have this Pasir Ris 8, which is going at 1,600 per square foot versus this Marina 1 residences, which was going at 2,007. If you're an investor back then, which one will you choose?
I think a very natural, my natural instinct would tell me to buy Pasir Ris 8 because, 1,006 versus, 2007, that would have been a very natural choice for me.
You're absolutely correct. So most of the investors, I would say 70 to 80% of the investors, they will naturally choose Pasir Ris 8 because the price gap is so huge. It's almost 70% price gap. So there is no compelling factors for the investors who are buying into marina areas project. There is no compelling factor like, I buy this, it's sure to be huat kueh, sure make money, right? So the next question I have for you is if you're buying an OCR project, let's say Pinery, which earlier on we talked about, versus Marina 1, versus One Marina Gardens, OMG, today in the year 2026, with the prices of Pinery being at about 2.5 to 2.7, while Marina for the lower floors going around 2.7 to 3,000. One at Tampines, or we can say Bedok Reservoir, the other one at Marina. Which one would you choose today?
I think as investors, if I see that the price gap is narrowing like that, then I will fall back on the historical pattern of how property prices will perform, especially in today's market context when we see that the One Marina Garden and the Pinery is having such a narrow gap. I would firmly believe that, a very safe choice as an investor would be the One Marina Garden.
Yeah, definitely right. Because the premium that we call it has already diminished. So all in all, right, it cannot be like OCR selling at the same price as a central project, right? Okay, so next one, if we were to compare the other one, which is Seaside Residences, 10 years ago, Seaside at Siglap was launched around 2005, 2006. And then Marina One Residences was also going at 2.7. That's a huge gap. So back then, if you are investors 10 years ago, which one will you choose to enter into?
I think a very natural choice would definitely be the project at Siglap as well, because it's such an attractive price point compared to a place at Marina.
Sure. So did you know, right, as of today, both the Siglap, which is a resale project, has already hit 2,700. And then the other project, a new launch, Vela Bay, surrounding this seaside, just round the corner, is going between $3,000 to $3,200 per square foot. But these two projects are OCR. And as of today, right, OMG, a central project right beside the CBD, a new township, is only going at about 2.7 to 2.8 for its units there.
I think in this case, I would apply one of the very important investment metric, which I call it the margin of safety. Because as an investor, I think now that you raise such an important number, when we see that Vela Bay and OMG, both of this project has a very, very significant price gap of between $300 to $500, then it also tells us that this is the margin of safety that investors of OMG could enjoy, if they were to enter this. And on top of this, margin of safety between 300 to 500. And as an investor, if I can enjoy a 4% rental yield from this, it will be even more attractive.
You're definitely correct. So the point here I would like to point is, if let's say the market is down, property cycle can never always be up and bullish, right? So in the event if the market is down, for OMG, we always have a natural tenants pool right beside it. This is a project where tenants, when they look at rental units they want to look at, they will not miss, right? If you agree. And then for this kind of project, right, in a bad market, you can always rent it out first and then ride out the wave, ride out the bearish market. And then in a good market, you can always choose to dispose it, right? So for a lot of people, if they buy OMG, this will be the kind of strategy that they can adopt. There's always a buffer, like what you say, marginal buffer. Marginal buffer. There's always a buffer, and we call it a safety net. So when the market is good, you sell. When the market is not so good, you just rent and ride it out and wait.
And I fully agree with that. I think as an investor, definitely a $300 to $500 margin of safety is very important for me, because if I were to buy in the project, I want to know that it's undervalued. And I think if you bring up the example of Vela Bay, this is a very, very prime example. It goes to show that I think the OCR project has been showing signs of overheatedness, can be a sign of danger as investors, because when you enter, you are hoping that the next person would pay a way higher price. For example, if you enter Vela Bay at 3,000 to 3,002, then are you going to sell at 3,006 to 3,007 in order to make a decent profit? No investors will want to sell at a loss, and most of the investors today, especially when it comes to property purchase, we are all looking at between $300 to $500 per square foot kind of profit. And that means that if Vela Bay in the future is going to be selling at between 3,006 to 3,007, if I'm an investor in OMG, the very natural margin of safety that I would enjoy will be even bigger, because I entered at 2007 for a project in a very central location. So I think this is something that would make a lot of sense. Joy, could you share with me more other insights that, from a realtor's perspective, what should I also look out for in this particular project if I want to enter?
Sure. So first of all, right, when we buy into Marina project, people look out for yield because on the overall, the people who will be buying will definitely be the investors. Whereas for OCR projects, when people buy, what are they focusing on? They are more focused on like layout, whether is it usable, is it livable, am I able to stay there for the next 5 to 10 years, and then whether the facade looks good or not from the outside. Like if I were to drive past, right, wow, is it recognizable? Just like Jadescape is something that you definitely cannot miss, right? Okay, these are the factors when people buy into OCR projects, they focus on. However, today's emphasis is totally different. We're just looking at you because the buyers who are buying, whether is it the primary market or the resale market, they are investors per se.
And I think for a project to qualify as an investor project, could you share with me a bit more about the project mix in terms of 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom for this particular project?
Sure. So first of all, right, what we want to understand is OMG. It's a project with 937 units on the whole. It's developed by Kingsford. And then expected TOP is going to be April 2029 or even earlier because right now there's no COVID. And then there's a direct MRT access via the Thomson East Coast Line right below it. So these are some of the facts about this project. And then one thing to note is if you're buying into OMG today, right, on the left side, it's Gardens by the Bay. We are right beside it, which also means, right, these two segments here of OMG, we are facing a permanently unblocked view. And this is something which is irreplaceable. When you buy already, that's the value of the project, right? So this is part of the first mover advantage that we were also talking about. So up here on the site plan, this part here, it's going to be awarded soon because it has been recently launched under the GLS. And then this part and this part would also have upcoming developments, which we will not touch too much on these today. And then next part, in terms of the unit mix, Master David, you were asking me, right? So essentially, this entire project, we are heavily loading all on the 1 and 2 bedder.
Wow.
On the whole, it's 70.2%. And then there's one particular 3-bed dual key, which is made up of the studio and a 2-bed combined. So on the whole, we are looking at 73% of the overall projects, which is for investors. And then of course for the 3 and 4 bed, usually they are for the homestays. Okay. And then moving forward, what we have to understand for OMG, which is very important because this will affect us, our exit plan, the holding period, and then of course who we eventually sell to in the resale market. These are the factors that we cannot ignore. Okay, so we compare between two different segments. The first one being the mass market condo. So, Master David, what do you think? Mass market in the resale segment, who would usually be our buyers?
I think in the mass market condo, right, I think many of the people who will be buying that will be the families, will be people who are looking to get their children to good schools. And which is why I think in my opinion, I would say that generally speaking, people who would make a huge profit from mass market condo, they are typically looking at 3-bedder, 4-bedder, or some of the people with a more generous budget will be looking at 5-bedroom itself.
That's absolutely correct. So maybe I want to share with you. Do you know, right, late last year, we have one project in the north, which I would not name it, okay, obtaining its TOP. And then right before it TOP, right, we have a huge influx of 2-bedroom up in the market for sale. So what do you think happens to all these 2-bed units?
So I think, generally speaking, if you ask me, Joy, these 2 bedrooms, I don't think they will fare very well because historically speaking, mass market condos, 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom, they have a huge difficulty moving. And I think investors who have previously bought into those mass market 1 or 2-bedroom, they've experienced that firsthand.
You're absolutely correct. So for the 2-bedders, right, the performance of these 2-bedder, they are definitely not the best, I would say. So to dissect this phenomenon, right, so these homeowners, when they buy into these 2-bedder units, they have the intent to do a quick flip. So they want to do a quick capital gain at the end of 3 to 4 years, thinking that, oh, this project, the location is good. There is good school, just 1 to 2 clicks surrounding it. So when I buy this, right, sure can make money. However, I would say that there's a mismatch in terms of their expectation versus the reality. So what happened is, at the end of the day, right, the best performer were actually the 3-bed, 4-bed, and the 5-beds. So what happened was, I would say these people in the resale market, they buy over, okay, for their own stay, for personal consumption, and as well as for the school. So with that, right, the 2-bedders, they were not performing at its best. And then for the investors who are looking to buy into an OCR project soon, maybe this is something that they wish to reconsider, like if they are intending to buy and do a quick flip, perhaps they can look at a project in the central area. Because as mentioned earlier, whether it's good market, bad market, they are definitely covered in both ways. So for One Marina Gardens, whether it's the primary market or the resale market, the buyers would essentially be the same. They are all the investors per se. So investors, what are they most focused on would be the yield. So one thing to decide whether the yield is something which works out for them would be, the first one, how low can the purchase price be? And number 2, how high can their rental rates be? Okay, so these are the basic facts that we want to find out first before we decide whether this project is something that we can buy into today.
Great, Joy. So I think from our conversation, I've picked up a few important pointers that I would like to summarize for our investors of OMG. I think first thing first, investors of OMG, we are looking at a margin of safety because of the entry price that is being offered by the developers, Kingsford, who is known for historically pricing their projects very aggressively to make sure it sells out well. And I think the important fact to take away is that because of the entry price presented by Kingsford, we are looking at a margin of safety specifically for this OMG project at between 300 to 500 PSF compared to projects like Vela Bay and Pinery. And at the same time, we could also be enjoying a rental yield of up to 4% for projects in like specifically the OMG itself. And Joy, now that I'm very interested in this particular project, could you share with me specifically on the 2-bedder layout itself, what makes it appealing, and at the same time, to help the audience understand on the rental yield potential. And I would like to ask you to explore a few projects on the Tanjong Pagar area. Specifically, we're looking at Sky Suite at Anson, Altez, and Icon, because they are very close proxy market comparable. They are very close proxy market comparables for OMG itself. So, Joy, could you share with me some insights, please?
Sure, Master David. So you're absolutely correct. Today we'll be sharing Tanjong Pagar area's condo because I would think that the demographics of the tenant here, they are pretty much similar. They are all singles, couples, and then flying in for work. And then usually if they have families, they wouldn't be staying in the CBD area. So what we are looking at for the 2-bedders first, in terms of the layout first. So the layout, they're all pretty much the same. They are dumbbell and then very good space efficiency. Okay, so in terms of the deciding matrix to go into for this project would be the yield. So the yield-wise, earlier on you mentioned it's about 4%. And then what's deciding the yield would be how low can your purchase price be today? And of course, how high can your rental rates be later, right? So onto the demographics of the tenant first. So in terms of Icon, the average PSF that we are getting is $6.34 based on the sizing of 900 to 1,000. And then next one, we have Altez. Average pricing is around $7.30. And then the sizing is between 800 to 900 and 1,001 to about 1,002. And then of course, we have the smallest unit type, which is Sky Suites at Anson. They are going around $8.77 on the average. And then we have 3 particular unit here, which achieve an average rental of about $9.50. So on the whole, you can see that based on this rental summary, the smaller the unit gets, the higher the rental PSF. So today, if you are buying into OMG, right, buying into a unit which is cheap or smaller is definitely the strategy to go about buying into this project. Okay, so in terms of the illustration of the rental rates that we are using, we are going to use about $10 per square foot because Sky Suites at Anson has already transacted at about $9.60. Okay, so why are we not doing a plug and play like Marina One Residences? Is 2-bedder, it's performing quite well, 7,500 thereabout. So why are we not getting 7,500 as our calculation base? Is because there are varying factors for OMG. First of all, we have to know that this is definitely a harmonized project. Okay, the space is more efficient. They are all dumbbell layout, and then of course the sizing wise is also smaller. So to take Sky Suites at Anson's PSF is definitely a fairer comparison because Sky Suites is going at about $950. So in the future, I think we should be able to rent it out at $10 per square foot.
I think it's a very fair comparison in terms of the prices as well. I would fully agree with you on that.
So right now, before we jump into how are we going to calculate and derive at the rental rate of OMG, we have to first understand what is the rental acceptance rate, the benchmark rate in the Marina area. What are all the other counterparts receiving? As in the investor, what kind of rates are they okay to accept? Okay. First of all, we have the sale at Marina, which is averaging at about 4%. This is based on the average contract of 1.95 mil versus its average rental of 6,005. And then for Marina Bay residences, it's attaining a rental rate of about 4.1%. And then lastly, Marina One residences, it's also going at about 4%. This means to say, right, for all the projects at Marina, since they have 4%, if today we were to buy into OMG, we must definitely have this 4%. Otherwise, we will lose out in comparison to our counterparts. You agree?
Yeah, I fully agree on that. I think this is a very important comparison that we're making, especially looking at not just Hampton Park areas, but also the Marina Bay area condos as well.
Okay, so in order to let our audience further understand how are we going to break down the calculation and show them whether this particular unit is something that they can buy into today. Is it a safe purchase? So shall we look at some numbers?
Yes, of course. Very important aspect.
Sure. So we have this particular unit, which is 04-21, which is still listed today. It's 657 square feet. Listed price is about 1.896 in terms of its asking price. So assuming today we are receiving a $9 per square foot for this particular unit. Right, so that works out to be $5,913 per month, and then per annum we are getting about $71,000 in terms of rental income. So to work back, so in terms of rental yield, it's about 3.74% on the whole. So let's say eventually we put this up in the market for sale. There's a good chance that we might even need to reduce our pricing today in order for investors to get that 4% rental rate. Otherwise, they will not buy. There's no compelling reason for them to buy an OMG, right? Because like you see all other resale projects, they are all ready, and then there is a 4% rate. So there is no reason like they should buy in the unit today from us. Okay, so let's say the rental rate becomes $10 per square foot for whatsoever reason. Okay, overall, we are getting a $6,500 per month, and then rental yield is 4.16, which means we are slightly better off than the benchmark rental rate. So with that, if eventually the person thinks that for any reason they want to sell, there's always a room for growth of about 74,000. Of course, that's not fantastic. If that's the case, then probably it's better for them to hold out first and then wait for the market to appreciate a bit more than they sell.
Wow, Joy, I really thank you for sharing with me so many wonderful insights. I think if there's one very important punchline that I would like our audience to take away is that, because Vela Bay was sold at 3,000 to 3,002, and you're telling me that OMG is transacting at 2.7. So this tells me that we can safely tell our Vela Bay neighbors that my exit price will be your entry price. And at the same time, I get to enjoy a 4% rental yield. So this is what I call margin of safety. This is what I call value investing, Warren Buffett style in property context. So Joy, really thank you for coming here to our podcast. And I also want to tell, buyers of OMG, if you're transacting through my dear client Joy, what you're going to enjoy will be 3 beautiful perks from Imperial Harvest. First, the moment you tell me, oh, Master David, I bought an OMG unit from Joy and I would like to get these following perks. Yes, let me just tell you what are the perks you get to enjoy. First, you get a free complimentary feng shui audit of your existing residence. 2, you get to choose the what unit through Imperial Harvest Feng Shui Insights Pool Analysis. 3, you get to audit your OMG unit for free upon TOP. So these are the 3 perks that you get to enjoy when you transact through my dear client Joy. So thank you, Joy, for coming to our podcast again, and I'd like to thank our audience I hope all of you have enjoyed this insightful podcast with Joy, and good evening to everybody.
Thank you, Master David. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.